Hello everybody, seems I have time, so while I have this day to figure out my truck, I'm going to go through things people always ask. They always ask and they always go through. This video gives you everything you should read if you want to know how the world works, who's in charge of what, and how Canada is to operate in it. I did not create the Canadian government or system. I did not create international law, and I definitely don't run the P5. We're going to start slowly. We're going to go through things. One, the Constitution of Canada, Canada's Constitutional Act. Many people try to narrate narratives that don't represent the Constitution, or believe somehow that by ignoring that document, that principle of Canada recognized throughout the entire world and internationally in international law, people think that somehow we can just throw that all away and Canadians get to do whatever they like, whenever they want, kick stomp their feet and say, oh, I want it this way, I want it that way. Tell me what I want to hear. I don't do that. I go by what is. And that's how I go forward on the international stage. That's how I go forward on our Canadian government. Knowing how it all works, applying that to everything you do, changes your direction and actually gets things done. Those who think that somehow, like a child, they can go through, make up any narrative they want, which is legal in Canada. Unfortunately, everybody, it is perfectly acceptable to lie to the masses in Canada. Not only is it acceptable, it's actually called for. That's the Constitution. You should all, if you haven't read it, it's the first thing in the title. And as I say, I am not the Canadian government. I never have been. I've never been elected. I ran in 2019 in Alberta. I've presented narratives to help provinces, i.e. my home province, Alberta. But what is the rule of law and how do we get there? That's the work I do. There's a narrative for Alberta and other provinces or territories should they want to pursue that. But I also need to take on the Canadian system because that is where it all starts. I've asked so many of you to take the time and read the Canadian Constitution. I even did a video where I go through the Canadian Constitution as it applies to all of you. People talk about rights. They talk about charter rights. They talk about human rights. They talk about civil rights. These are all the rights people have in the world, which brings me to the Charter of the UN 1945. Embedded in this video, you can all open that, download it, go through it, read it, start to finish, learn what is and what isn't, because I didn't create the world. I didn't create the system. I am subject to it, the same as all of you. Now, there are rules. There are important documents, important things that apply to all Canadians and most majority of the countries in this world. The Charter, which I said it's listed there, read it. Then there's important documents like Geneva, what's binding that came from the League that actually comes across and it's applied to Canada. Taken over by the United Nations, expanded greatly by the United Nations, many conventions, ratified international binding law. I put the P5 there again. They run the system, they run the whole show, regardless of what you're told, regardless of General Assembly persons who say, oh, they're irrelevant. That's a complete lie. There are so many people who have a fantasy of a world they would like to see or a country they would like to see, but that's not what is. It's actually the opposite. Most of what people tell you is full-blown ignorance. That's reality. And if you ignore that and you go on, you choose not to read Geneva, which is binding on every Canadian citizen, you should read it. Read it. Before you run off on YouTube or other people's narratives, or a doctor told me, or a guy from another country told me, or a group of nurses from another country, or a bunch of educators from another country. They have a website. They have no authority in this world whatsoever, but you don't even read who they are, where they come from, what country they are from, what rules are bound to them by their country's constitution. Anyone can create a website. Anyone can post any kind of narrative. And unfortunately for Canadians, you get to eat that because you're bound in a whole bunch of lies. Your politicians lie to you steady. They don't want to change any laws restricting that. So it opens the door to every Tom, Dick, and Harry throughout the world to tell you whatever narrative they want to. Political parties, would-be political parties, parties who are registered, will lie their faces off to you. I put in Vienna, the conventions of Vienna, binding international law. You don't get out of it. You don't. If you try to breach it, you're going to run into all kinds of problems in other countries around the world. You honor it, or you're going to find yourself in serious, serious problems. I go into Nuremberg. You can click on that. I use Ref World because they take the original documents. They show them to you absolute word for word. I would do the UN.org. However, they're downloadable, which means I can only download and extrapolate in picture format, do a presentation. I can't do it live, but you all, with the links I've provided you, give you all these documents in their reading entirely. Never mind the commentary, never mind groups that are on these websites that have their own language. Just read the documents as they are. Learn what is applicable to you and what isn't. When you hear the word non-binding, that means it's not applicable to you. Not applicable. Unless, going back to the first document, the Constitution of Canada, your elected government, whether that's regionally or federally in their division of powers, has decided to take that agreement out of the proverbial garbage can and apply it to you. Nuremberg's listed here, and I'm going to say it again for everybody. Nuremberg applies only to specifically European Axis powers. The colonial countries of World War I and then in II, who breached the League of Nations and then breached the UN, finding binding laws. Okay? It was established after the UN by the victorious allies, some former colonials, some never colonials, but the 5 countries who run this world. Now, some of those conventions are binding law. You won't see China on them because China was in a civil war that was much, much larger than World War II. A lot of people don't know that. China had a civil war. Out of the civil war, the Taiwanese government in 1952 was replaced by Beijing. From that point forward, nothing with China was binding or in a P5 state until later in 1971, when they finally made a deal with Beijing, the United States. Every other UNSC recognized China except for the United States of America, because the UN was found with the Taiwanese regime, who was replaced in 52. That's why you will not find during that period of civil war, Taiwan lost, the regime, republic lost, was replaced by the Beijing communist regime. In 71, they got full status. USA took the knee, said, sign the Declaration of Human Rights in 1948, and we will continue, and you will get your UNSC power. China did that. However, Richard Nixon, because of how hard he fought against communism, was not able to complete the Declaration of Human Rights signing with Russia, the Federation of Russia now, which at the time was the former Soviet Union. Now, that is the most pressing matter in any kind of international law today. And that is Joe Biden meeting with Vladimir Putin, ending all sanctions if Russia binds the 1948 Declaration of Human Rights, which is the last P5 member to sign it. Should they sign that, it will be binding worldwide and ratified, cemented absolutely in international law on all countries of the world. That's reality. Should one of the five wish to remove that, that can cost them their membership as a UNSC. They could lose their P5 status. That's why it's important. Canadians go on tangents. They go on all kinds of narratives. People get groups. Canadians are the easiest manipulated in probably the world because of our political system, our constitutional monarchy. It's old. It's from a world that everyone who is on the UN Charter in 1945, already that many years ago, has mostly moved away from. There are very few nations, very few, that are still embedded in that system. Canada absolutely being the worst. We can look at Australia, we can look at New Zealand, but they have made amendments, changes that Canada has not or will ever make. Is it all of it for Australia and New Zealand? No. Has India totally gotten independence? No. And this brings me back to independence for a lot of people too. Those out west talking about independence. You can't achieve independence if you don't have sovereignty. And currently you don't. You don't even have regional constitutions. You're a soulless region. You can look again. You can kick, stomp your feet, but that is of every premier that's ever existed, holds tremendous constitutional power over absolutely all your civil rights, all of them. There is no rule book, no constitution demanded, if you read your federal constitution, stating provinces to adopt constitutions, but yet that's never happened. No one's ever highlighted that. The crown power absolute for all premiers. All they have to have is the lieutenant governor's winning signature, and they don't have to do any democracy whatsoever. They are pure autocrats, 100%. Federal Prime Minister can be, anytime he or she ever wishes, full 100% autocrat. They can usurp absolutely the entire Constitution through the colonial embedded power. This is called Governor General. Absolutely tied to Crown. Crown is absolutely Prime Minister. You will find the UK has left this system a long time ago, left Canada a very long time ago, finished and concluded, again, I'm going to say it, in 1952. There has never been a UK appointed Governor General or Lieutenant Governor since 1952. The Queen has nothing to do with it. I've seen posts and radicalism all over Canada in absolute fallacy and ignorance. Absolutely. People telling all of you realities that are not legal, not even close to truthful. In fact, quite the opposite. This is entirely Canada. Many groups, many what I call nut jobs. And I have to get rid of them, because if you can't read, you can't come forward with this. people are all up in arms about my decisions going forward, which has nothing to do with anybody. I actually champion rights and freedoms in real reality. Canada does not even close. Canadians, you have no real regional constitutions whatsoever. How could you ever govern yourselves when you're in absolute autocratic situation here? This isn't the United States. They have all 2/3 of their powers enshrined in very, very old constitutions, extremely old, hundreds of years old, some even older than that, older than the United States itself. And that is a long, long time ago, a very old institution. Russia is the same thing, regardless of its toes in communism, which is not a very old system of governance, not a governance I would like. I don't like the Chinese system. I didn't like what the Soviet Union had become. And I don't like the one-party system now. But, what of the regions? 85 regions in Russia, over 22 republics in Russia. They all have separate constitutions enshrining 2/3 of their rights and powers, separate from the federal system, empowered against the federal system, a check and a balance. Now, in Canada, we are 100% federalist autocratic. Read your constitution. There are things that were supposed to be done there that have never been done, especially since UK left in 1952. There has been nothing done. Zero. And people keep coming forward with radical narratives that have zero factual reality, zero truth. Again, in this title, I'm going to go back to it. It's all laid out for you to read. People ask me all the time, what do I read? What do I read? This video, this title gives you the links to everything you should read. Read it. I did not make this world. I do not control the Canadian government, and I most certainly don't control any province or region. I don't make the laws. I'm not a legislator. I'm subject to, just as all of you are. Now, I navigate that to come up with the way out and the way forward for everybody. That's all I do. That's it. I build things that can change the narrative. That's what I'm going forward with. Now I'm going to take questions. I want people to hit with questions about anything they wish to talk about, and we'll see what we can get through. That's what I'm going to do. So I'll scroll. I see a lot of people logged in there, but let's see here. Please talk about what idiot Ford is doing with the notwithstanding clause. This is terrible. Make people understand this. Well, Monica, it depends which use of the notwithstanding clause, because I can tell you right now, if Prime Minister doesn't like it, he loses. And Ford, so everybody knows, Doug Ford in Ontario, I've seen him in the last few years do 2 attempts at the notwithstanding clause, rejected by Governor General in the Prime Minister's office. When it comes to Premier and Prime Minister unilaterally making decisions, if they don't come together, meaning combine their crown power, the overriding power belongs to none other than Prime Minister, because lieutenant governors of every province and territory sit with the Premier. And they are appointed by Governor General, run by Governor General, who again is appointed by Prime Minister. So Prime Minister can take away your democracy of any province or any power of a Premier right through Governor General to Lieutenant Governor. Lieutenant Governor can say yea or nay to anything a Premier does. And Doug Ford has lost on 2 notwithstanding challenges back to back. And now everybody understand this. Lieutenant Governor, this is what I talk about King's Court. Lieutenant Governor can override your superior courts, the highest court of the province, overriding a premier. Governor General can override Supreme Court of Canada, federally highest court in the land. They can set precedent or decide not to hear your case or absolutely limit a judge's ability to give you any remedy at all. The reality is we're an autocracy. We have a King's Court federally and a King's Court provincially. If the Premier doesn't win the Governor General, the Crown of Federal Canada will take that right or any rights away. This is the highlight of autocracy. What's this? I'm reading this one. Adam Bryan says, I don't know why this is slipping. Let's see, I want to actually go through in order here. So that's Ford. Make sure I didn't miss any. So we got Ford. And then we got Tina. Research. Absolutely find out for yourself. Depend on your own understanding instead of believing someone else's narrative. And don't create your own. Find out what is real. Well said, Tina. And that's true, everybody. It's all about reading what is, not what isn't. Don't let other people interpret for you. And I get it, not everybody is a reader, but the documents provided here go into absolute detail of not only what the world is, what Canada is bound to. The Constitution of Canada tells you all everything you need to know. It's not a very long document. It's not even that difficult. That's the reality. And the sooner people do that, the sooner they're going to be able to see the narratives placed in front of them and be able to adapt to it and then start calling the government out on it. But people don't want to do that. They believe that a supreme leader, a supreme political party is going to save them. But the reality is they're just lying to you. They just want that crown for themselves. They take it for themselves. And they often, 75% of the time, breach international law, which causes us destruction and destitution. And then these big powers come along and say, we got you doing this bad, but don't worry, if you do this for us against your people, against your country, we're just going to let all that slide. And why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they? If Canada is that easy, that naive, and that incredibly corrupt, why not? That's reality. Okay, Adam Bryan says, Brian probably. Adam Bryan. In 2023 election, how do you plan on beating the electoral seats? Well, that's touring Canada in education, Adam. And that's what I have to do. That's why I'm going for the vaccine. I want to be able to tour just as fast as I can. It's my body, my choice. I don't care what people believe or what they're worried about. I'm not scared of COVID. This is my personal choice. I will do what I want to do for myself. I don't ask anyone's permission, and I definitely don't champion other narratives. I'm not scared of COVID-19, and I'm definitely not scared of any vaccines. I'm not having children. I'm a male. I'm over the age of 40. I'm not having kids anytime. I'm not worried about my bodily destructions or other narratives people create that aren't even really based in any kind of fact. The evidence doesn't show any of that, but that's just my opinion. I believe we can win the seats by educating. And the quicker I get to that, the quicker I get the party registered, the better. Take a vaccine. Gonna have to. I'm not doing COVID isolations, lockdowns. I'm not flying into provinces, worried about where I'm staying with strangers, or traveling on trucks with people I don't know. Will you get a ride back? Will you won't? I don't like instability or not guarantees. It's just not viable. Why slither around like a scared puppy, hiding from my government? I challenge the government. I'm not scared of nothing. and I'm going to take the vaccines, and I'm going to get traveling just as fast as humanly possible. And unfortunately, I don't agree with the government. I'm not the government. Again, like the title says, I'm not the government. I don't make the rules. I don't make the laws. I definitely don't agree with vaccine passports, but here it is in front of us. Take it or else we restrict the hell out of you. I don't have the luxury of having my life restricted any longer. We have work to do. I had a plan to have this party registered by May. I have all the signatures. That's not the issue. The issue is I don't have all the provinces. And before everybody starts talking to me again about what they think they know or what's real, you can look at Maverick and other parties. They don't have a true and uniform registration across Canada. There's a code and a section listed there. I understand this stuff very well. That's not going to be me. I already have other tremendous issues, which I will be doing a release later tonight, going through to all of you exactly what is with where we're going and some modifications I have to make. Federal politics is different, and they sure target political would-be parties, especially if they know you're likely to get registration, which have been attacked uniformly across every aisle. And of course, now there is a challenge with Elections Canada, and I'm going to have to address that. That's definitely a question I'm going to address all of you. But again, Adam, it's all about getting there as quick as possible, getting to all the Atlantic provinces and absolutely Quebec. Faster I can do that, the better. Least amount of restrictions and inhibitions, the better. Regardless of how I feel, it's not about me. Sandy D says, so Quebec Fed's changing construction. I think he meant constitution for us as possible in any way for a separate and become sovereign. No, Sandy D. See, this is the problem, everybody. When you look at Quebec and federal Canada unilaterally making a constitutional amendment for Quebec, that is to absolutely end sovereignty and any chance for independence. Quebecois don't know any better. They're going to believe Francois Legault. But the nation status is not independence. It's not a nation. It's not none of that. That is actually to slave everybody and place them inside the federalist system. It's the opposite. You can't do unilateral decisions. Like, let's say Premier Kenney said, which he does, oh, we're going to get an amendment too. He knows he was federal government. He is a federalist. You have to have the Prime Minister to unilaterally agree with that Premier. Remember what I said about Governor General and Lieutenant Governors? Just because a Premier wants something, if the Lieutenant Governor says no because they're sworn to Governor General, and Governor General tells them no because they're sworn to Prime Minister, that's the end of it. That's the end of it. And you can run, cry, and you can challenge to the Supreme Court of Canada, but if the Prime Minister doesn't want it to go through, he or she is the Crown of Canada, the ultimate authority. All premiers get a small Crown authority too, over 2/3 of your civil rights, but they don't get to decide the direction or constitutional changes unless the Prime Minister agrees to it. Do you think that any Prime Minister, Conservative, Liberal, Bloc, NDP, would ever upset the upper and lower Canada, which is the huge weight of Canada, to do anything for the benefit of Alberta or any other province western or any of the Atlantic provinces eastern or any of the territories? Do you think anyone going for the crown wants to upset Ontario and Quebec? The answer is no. You will never see unilateral constitutional amendments enshrining anything for any of the uncentral regions of Canada, meaning the western provinces, the Atlantic provinces, and the territories. that will take away from the mighty transfer of wealth to Ontario and Quebec. Sorry, everybody, but this is black and white. This is our weight of electoral seats. It's why I'm out east. It's why I have to do Quebec. I hope that answers your question, Sandy. You will never, ever, ever see a unilateral amendment that enshrines anything for Alberta in sovereignty. Besides, Canada has no sovereignty. What Quebec has gotten is actually less sovereignty. They've actually gone further away. They're trying to get a nation status equivalent to what the First Nations are registered. And you can ask all of them, East, West, ceded, unceded, treaty, not treaty, or Treaty of Britain versus Treaty of the New Canada, Confederation treaties. Ask any of them, how do you like being a nation, i.e. the First Nations, Métis, all of it, inside Canada through the Indian Act? How do you like that? How's that for Constitution? And again, everybody, if you take the time to read the Constitution, you will find we the people do not exist in the Canadian Constitution. First Nations do not exist in the Canadian Constitution. The only thing that clearly exists in the Canadian Constitution, repeated and in great detail, is the ultimate power of the politician, the only one who truly exists in the Constitution. Now, people say, but Dave, the Charter, 1982, the new Constitution, they give, the people are there, and they even have a whole section for First Nations. Everybody. The Charter, like all charters, all the way back to 1100 AD. You will look at the history of constitutional monarchies and who makes any charter bound to any monarch, or i.e. embedded crown. The answer is none. Zero. There are zero. That's truth. That's reality. And that's just the way Canada is, as it's always been for every constitutional monarchy. Charters can be thrown to the side by will of the Crown anytime, and you all just saw it. Whether that was Big Crown by Prime Minister, through that Governor General and all Lieutenant Governors, or in unison with the Premier with a smaller crown over 2/3 of your civil rights, which are not mentioned in any documents besides the Constitution of Canada. I don't even think any province has put forward a bill. You have Alberta Bill of Rights. That only overlaps charter rights. Very, very few details on any of the multitude of your civil rights. But what does it matter anyway? All the power of your civil rights belongs exclusively to Premier, who can be swayed easily and crown authority through Lieutenant Governor, mandated by Governor General, as per your ultimate crown Prime Minister. This is Canada. This is the absolute Constitution that nobody can deny. Your House, your legislatures mean literally nothing. Nothing when the Crown wishes to impose. Okay, can you find anything about what they're doing to us in Newfoundland, please, Dave? I'd have to see, Gerald, you'd have to show me. I don't go through provinces unless it's major news, but I know with fishing and those issues, that's about all I know. You'd have to be very specific about things that are happening in Newfoundland, and I could go look at it, but I know that all the Atlantic provinces are greatly restricted, more so than maybe even Alberta. Newfoundland's taken a monumental beating over the decades. Monumental beating. I can look at Labrador, Hydro, the 100-year deal, all about energy independence that was stolen from Newfoundlanders. It's sad. It's sad, really. This goes across many aisles. And again, Canada is a centralized system, a crown authority favoring 2 regions out of 13, enslaving the rest. That's Canada. That isn't a system you're going to see anywhere except for in absolute dictators and other autocrats or oligarch systems. Supreme civil law socialists, that's where you see this kind of system. Marilyn Horner, Aaron O'Toole's being controlled by Mao called. What makes you immune to extortion? What makes me immune to extortion? I don't know what Mao and Aaron O'Toole's deal is. I know that all politicians will take it, but I'm pretty poor. People try to make accusations. I've got a lot of that. People are like, oh, you're with this or you're with that, because I don't tell people what they want to hear or back up lies. I only tell the truth to everybody. And a lot of people don't seemingly want any of those truths. They want to be lied to, which allows you to be abused, majorly abused. Majorly abused by your government, by everybody. As for extortion, why would I be immune? I've never taken money ever. I have full disclosure in 2019 of my financials. I'm poor. I'm very, very poor. There was a time I was divorced, but that's not me now. I was fully disclosed in 2019. I'm probably the poorest politician to ever run. There's no history of any transfers with me. Everything I do in life is by work and work alone with these hands. That's what I've always done. And you're not going to find any records of any major payments. I hardly own anything at all. It's very, very minuscule compared to most Canadians. I'm way, way down here. So it's really not just offensive, but it's also pathetic that people can't read. Like, you can go look at 2019, and if you look now, if I was to disclose now, but I will disclose, like everyone has to when I run federally, you're going to see my net worth went down. My net worth went down because the little property I do hold in Alberta has been devalued sizably. And, for people who know me, I mean, it's, if I had all kinds of money, I think people would know. You ever see the vehicle I drive? I mean, it's what it is. I've already proven that I'm not extortable. I've already proved I can't be bought, beat, or broke. And because of that, you will get hammered. Anyone can look at it. There's been all kinds of trolls who've come up with, oh, there's all this about you from the radical left. And again, that was all dispelled. It's a pathetic group of leftists, extreme leftists, who don't want the crown system taken. People confuse our crown colonial system with communism. It's easy to do that, really. A lot of overlaps there. But the reality is we're in a much older, worse system outlawed today. And Canada operates that way. And until somebody takes them to task on it on the world stage, in these real organizations that really exist, you're not going to get it done. And I believe residential schools and the Catholic Church are absolutely key today, everybody. But thanks for the question anyway, Marilyn. But you guys can all look. I'm very poor. And anyone who's met me, I'm not driving some kind of great, wonderful, brand new car. I have no properties. I got no money coming in except for what these hands produce. And, I work every day of my life. So what's going to happen once they are found guilty? I think, Merck says good morning. Jonathan LaBelle, I think you're referring to our politicians. Should ICC take the case and the Catholic Church comes on board and we can get a unison with First Nations, which I think it's possible. We're going to see that today. We're going to go through a number of narratives to see where we end up. But the reality is, I'm going to continue going forward with this. And if we get this case to the ICC, which I think is more than possible, especially if we win with the Catholic Church, if we get their support, bishops signed on, it absolutely will go there. And if they take that over and the politicians attached to all residential schools are found guilty, we will be able to hold them financially account. If we don't do that, ICC would find them guilty. There's a number of countries you can look at. I've been studying this for 3 years straight on ICC alone. There's a rich history of all these nations, mostly in Africa, that went rogue, did things a lot like what Canada's done with the residential schools. This is an atrocity, a massive scale atrocity. I can't see the ICC sitting out on it. It's just a matter of our narrative. And already they're trying to usurp it by throwing in the Catholic Church, which the Catholic Church can't be brought into the ICC. They're not a UN state. Vatican City is not a UN state. Lawyers should all know this. If they don't, I don't know what to tell all of you. I guess King's Court, this is the corruption of Canada, and that sworn oath to the Crown. I just don't see how so many legal professionals can be this ignorant. Unless, of course, you're already trying to do a psyops, as they like to say, and destroy any credible prosecution of the government. Because the government is not safe from ICC should they take the case. They can be found guilty, put into prison for a number of years. Anyone alive or participated directly as a government official, whether appointed or elected, who participated at provincial, territorial level, or federal, all of them can and would be found guilty if they had any involvement in residential schools. They most certainly would be. Catholic Church can't be. So we need them to be the witnesses, not to be prosecuted, because the ICC can't prosecute. We can't have a narrative, Catholic Church and politicians. That gets all the politicians off, because then the ICC says, we can't do what we normally do all over the world because you've put in a narrative of an organization that isn't our privy. It's not in our jurisdiction, and the P5 will shoot it down. That's the truth. They have to. We can't take the Queen or the UK, not privy. None of the P5 can be prosecuted. We have to target solely the Canadian government. To do that, we need the Church to testify against the Canadian government. And the Pope said to. He said that. That's clearly in his words. Stand with the sons and daughters of Canada. All sons and daughters move away from the colonialism, which is Canada, a colonial embedded constitution. We have to move away from it. The Church needs to testify against the government of Canada, whom they were employed by. If found guilty, politicians will go to jail. Depending on how severe or what is implicated hands-on wise, people could be put to death. Financially, that is up to us, the people. Once exposed, the government, and how they did it, this is a great way to show everybody the colonial autocratic power, the crown power, and to highlight to the world that this must end in Canada. Bringing the P5 back to the board of Canada, saying, wait a minute, UK was removed, we did all that, you were to govern, you didn't do any amendments. In fact, you took the colonial power, that's clear as day, provable. You've used it for ill purposes, which was ruled illegal in this world. It's the UN Charter. Now, Canada, either you amend now, or we're going to throw you out of the UN. And before everybody jumps up, like I said, all those radicals saying, oh, we went out of the UN, and all you thinking that somehow Canada will be a better place, Palestine is not a member of the UN, can't be brought into the UN. Look at it. Would you want to be a Palestine? Would you want to have zero sovereignty, zero rules of Geneva, zero rules of Vienna, and many other binding international laws? The UN Charter not to apply? Your absolute sovereignty subject to whoever can invade your country at will? and there's nothing anyone in the world can do about it. I don't want to be that country. I don't want to be a Palestine. No way. And there are other nations you can look at who are not in the UN, which P5 have said individually, that's our territory, or we will administer it, hands off rest of the world. That is their privy. That is their power in this world. I didn't write the world. If you leave the UN, you lose all and any hope of ever achieving any sovereignty whatsoever. And don't ever look at Taiwan as a great example. You go become a citizen of Taiwan, try to travel. Where's the papers? What's your likelihood of ever traveling? They're locked on that island, subject to everything through communist China Beijing regime. Everything. The United States can talk a strong game and call it out. No, the people of Taiwan must rebel. China's a powerful country that USA has no authority over because they are a P5. Russia and Crimea, has Russia been shot down? Has it started a World War III? No, it hasn't. No, it hasn't. Ukraine, the reality is each and every P5 country has its full authority. KG says, good morning, Dave. KG says, question, when you meet on the 28th, what is the process after that? Where does that take things? Well, thanks, KG, for the question. The purpose of the 28th is to present a letter that we're sending, that's been sent to the ICC, present the letter going forward to the church, which I released last night, all the bishops and cardinals, whatever that is. I'm in hopes, high hopes, that they come on board. We are going to put that through to the P5, who are judge, jury, and executioner. When they have all of that together with all of your names, that's going to put a tremendous pressure on the ICC, because the ICC is subject, the highest court in the world, binding court in the world on any UN state outside of the P5, because the P5 run the ICC. If they get all the information heads up first on Children's Day of Genocide, looking at Canada's clear children genocide, what do you suppose is going to happen with Karim Khan, ICC prosecutor? Do you think he's going to worry much about what Canada says or what world say? He may when he sees the Catholic Church attached, if they attach themselves to our letters. But more than that, if the P5 contact his office and start going, what's the deal with Canada's genocide? What are you doing with that? Do you understand the church is separate from the UN? Do you understand Canada's committed a genocide here? Have you read international law? Right? And Karim has, I'm sure. But when he gets that kind of pressure, I'm sure it will push things along much, much faster, especially when you get all P5 on board. And honestly, I can see UK going for this when not implicated, when we're looking exclusively, inclusively at Canada, the state, never mind UK. I believe so. Backed by RCMP police. Okay, Maryland says swayed, extorted, backed by RCMP police. Well, police are sworn to the crown, Maryland. So that's what it is. That's what it's not just the police, it's the military, it's the lawyers, it's all public service. Again, read the Constitution of Canada. Look at what oaths are sworn, how they're sworn, and if it doesn't specify Crown, it specifies the Constitution of Canada, which gives all the authority to the Crown. Either way, it never says you the people. Never. Never in a million years. Looks at Muskrat Falls, Nalcor. I'm not sure. Falls in Nalcor. Okay, I'll look at it, but I think you gotta do a little spell check there. You're doing great, Dave. Just keep moving up. You're the one. Thanks, KJ. Don't be offended. The Crown buys people. Well, they're not going to buy me, Marilyn. I mean, I've been at this for years. I ran in the provincial election. Nobody bought me. Marilyn says, what is the purpose of the G7? The G7 is a specific set of P5 members who have countries following their lead. That's what it is, their economic lead. Which, sure, treaties, groupings are great if they're economically viable. This new direction, again with proliferation and non-proliferation, is not economically viable. Not for Italy, not for Japan, not for Canada, and certainly not for Germany. And we're seeing them change directions. Who's not changing direction right now? Canada. Things are great, groups are great, but it has to be for your sovereign benefit. But again, of all those countries, Canada has no sovereignty. We give it away. So what is our benefit? There isn't. We're exploited. We're to be exploited. And you can blame the G7 leading countries, but if your country allows it, whose fault is it? It's our politicians. It's our broken confederation, our ill constitution. We're in a constitutional crisis. We have been absolutely since 1952. Question, have you spoken to Pastor Kevin Annette, who has all the information about who's involved in residential school children sacrifices? No, Marilyn, and I don't know why he would, because he's not in the Catholic Church. He doesn't have access to any of those documents. When we start going off to fantasy, I have to shut it down right there. He doesn't have any information. He's full of shit. That's reality, sorry. You know, all these people. Things would move much quicker if Russia was to sign the Declaration of Human Rights 1948. Absolutely. Residential schools, Mark, wouldn't have been able to even exist post-1948 had Russia signed the Declaration of Human Rights 1948. If that had become bound to the five, the whole world would have had to adopt it. Even China and the Uyghurs, that wouldn't exist right now, or China would lose its P5 status. Graydon says, been trying to get membership info. Who do I contact? Graydon, it's all about where you live. We have people all over the place. You gotta PM or post where you live, and then we can go from there. And then they keep talking about this equalization referendum. Am I right when I say it's a deflect? Yes. Equalization is bound in our Constitution. Section 91 and 92 allow your autocratic government, provincial, territorial, or absolutely federal, to tax you by any mode, means necessary. They can do whatever they want. Equalization is bound later in the Constitution as well. Your government can do anything it wishes, and there's nothing any of you can do about it. There is zero taxation by representation in Canada. It's what was the final straw that broke the camel's back that actually led to the War of Independence for America against Great Britain. They said enough of this, and there are tremendous, tremendous rules in the United States on taxation. Tremendous rules. How to govern, rules of governance in both regional constitutions, each and every 50 state, as well as absolutely the federal government. Now, they can get away with some stuff. I don't like the full amount of the federal government in the U.S. They have some problematic areas of taxation in relation to federal taxes, which limits representation. And so far, when you win House and Senate, you can really do some damage on the American people. That's reality, especially with budgets. KJ said, I sent you my location via email. I'm an hour from Edmonton. Yeah, there's several people. There's Dennis Chenard. There's Jamie McConstitutionalist. There's also, depending on which direction you are, there's several other folks too. So, yeah, there's all kinds of people out in Alberta. And then Graydon says Nigeria region, St. Catharines. Well, I'm in Ontario here, Graydon. I'm doing Oshawa tomorrow as long as my truck is back together. I'm going to be doing that. But this, we'll see about Nigeria. That's going to be some time yet. South, yeah. Okay. I see that is the end of the questions for today. I hope that was informative. I hope that reaches a lot of people. It's what it is, everybody. People will choose to believe what they're going to believe. I can only give truth. That's all I do. And I'm not going to rest until the party's built. I'm not going to follow any radical narratives or entertain any lies, regardless of where that comes from. Radical right, radical left. I've always been this way. I'll always be 100% honest. Whether people like it or not, I don't care about populism. I don't care about weeding the garden, so to speak, or offending people. Because I can't. I can't be the typical Canadian politician who tells you all what you want to hear and then turn around and steal everything you have or are ever going to have. And that's what's happening in Canada. If that's what you want, there's all kinds of parties. They're all in on it. You can go follow any other narrative, and they'll tell you everything you want to hear, lie their faces off to you, present verbally a bunch of diarrhea, but then you'll see they'll publish an entirely opposite documentation, which may hit 3 or 4 narratives you like, but then they impose anywhere from 100 to 178 alternative ideas that take everything away from you. Thanks, that's my video today. Bye all.